Okay. And I think
Want
we
to
are
do an
live.
introduction again?
Yeah, I will, of course. Yes, we are live. Okay. Well, so it seems that Skeletor, we were testing for a while behind the scenes, and it seems that Skeletor is his voice is now coming loud and clear. Well, not loud and clear, but not robot. And also, I fixed my fucking hair so I don't look 40 anymore. I also tried to shave, but like my electric razor stopped working,
Can I get
so it
a
looks
server?
uneven.
Can I
It was
get?
just bad, but
Can I get an invite?
whatever.
Not invite, but link to server to stream.
Yes, of course. My bad. Here you go. There you go. Okay. So, we're going to start talking about democracy. My fucking neckbeard really is bugging me, though. I really should have fucking shaved this before. But whatever. At least my fucking hair isn't fucked as it was before. That really was fucking atrocious. I'm sorry for those who were in the past stream. Anyways, enough about my hair, and we're talking about democracy. Skeletor is for this sort of autocratic, this fascist type of organization, and Socialism Done Left is for socialist democracy. So, yes.
So as I was making my point, I think that the reason why America and first world countries are so materially well off isn't just because their countries are democratic, their countries are in position to exploit other countries. I don't say it's necessarily bad, but I think that if America was by some miracle fascist, that their geopolitical position would still allow them to maximize their geopolitics and exploit others without any reason. I mean, not without any reason, but without any problem. The reason why it's so why we engage, why we have such living standards in first world countries, because the bourgeois class wants to avoid class conflict. That's why it's pacified by social reformism, and that's why we have high living standards, which are backed by the exploitation of third world. Which
So
I don't necessarily oppose. I'm all for exploitation of third world, but I think that it should be done on a greater scale in more effective manner.
So I do agree that to some degree the economic well-being of the rich countries, like especially those in Europe and the periphery of Europe, the colonies of Europe, like Australia and the United States, does result from the exploitation of the third world. However, when I claim that democracy increases growth, it's not just like I'm not just like saying, oh, let's look at Europe. Worldwide, I presented a study. It's from Acemoglu, who's famous for producing these kind of studies, which show that after countries transition to democracy, there's a statistically significant increase of GDP growth, which is a broad proxy for growth in general. And when countries leave democracy, there's a significant decrease in GDP growth. It's not just like a first world thing. It's like a worldwide thing that more democratic structures tend to be more innovative, less corrupt, and higher growing.
I think that forgets the political nature. Like, for example, if country becomes democratic, it probably means it aligned with American regime, which will then invest in that little country with its capital to establish political hegemony. Like, for example, my beloved country, like Yugoslavia, while it was like autocratic socialist government, obviously it failed. But as soon as America established our protectorate over the Balkans, they're increasing the economy because we became American satellite states, and they invested in us to maximize the exploitation of resources. The reason why if some country leaves democracy is because they really left the geopolitical sphere of America, and America is now in conflict with them. You can look at almost any autocratic state in the world, and they're clearly opposed to American imperialist interests. So obviously they will have trade issues and economical warfare against America. Like North Korea, China, Russia, like all of these autocratic governments, they are in economic conflict with America. Obviously they're going to decrease because they have smaller geopolitical power than America.
So there's this other. If you want to go even further back, right before like we can blame America for these sort of things, I can pull up. I think this is the first paper that Acemoglu published, at least after he got his PhD or something, where he found that when you look at the benefits of free trade from the Atlantic, because there was this huge establishment of colonization in the Americas, right, and it brought back huge riches to Spain, Portugal, France, England. When you look at all of the countries that had a lot of Atlantic trade, only those that had strong institutions, generally the democratic institutions, the ones where the monarchs were the least powerful, the parliaments were the most powerful, only those saw growth from that free trade. Spain saw no growth from all of its trade. Portugal, no growth. France, no growth. The Netherlands, the UK, growth. There is a strong correlation between like democracy and having institutions that actually allow people to build economic growth. That's the basic way I'd put this. It's not just geopolitics.
Even I would say even there you're wrong, because the reason why the Spain, Portugal, or France could not maximize the field governments could not maximize the production. Obviously, a healthy bourgeois system with more advanced means of production and industrial production are simply better.
Oh shit. He's fucking...
Yeah, it's happening again.
Fuck. Well...
Testing.
Okay, I got access to the article. Democracy does cause growth.
I linked. If you don't have access to Enber, the third link I think is acemoglu2018.pdf. If you just want to download it directly.
Okay, yeah, no, I was able to log in with institutions, so I do have access to the actual full article. Let's see. Keep talking. I'm just looking it over, just to check the data and see what it actually is saying, because I do take statistics, so I can interpret it.
This one is actually this one isn't a really complicated article as far as I recall, but this is actually something they taught us in not taught us. They presented this article in our history of economic development class, and I just figured I'd mention it because it's pretty famous. It's one of these classic papers which seem to show that institutions affect how capitalism works, how investment works. And so one of the things is that capitalism only seemed to develop in places there were democracies. That's the theory that they're presenting in this paper. So.
Fair enough. Okay. Let's see. Observations for per capita. Okay, this seems reputable. I mean,
I hope there are no problems, right?
So far, no problems. We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you. All right. All right.
If we don't want to debate about economics, and we can, but these studies are relatively dense, and it's unfair a bit to push studies on you and force you to be like, I'm going to disprove your study on stream. We can always just talk about the morality of it. Like, I think there's a strong argument that unless you have a democratic system, you can't meaningfully say that when the state owns means of production, it is owning them in the name of the people. That's the argument there.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see. So with this data, there could be the difference in the means of GDP per capita. It could be possible that it might be sample error. I actually might be able to even check that. Keep talking. I'm just going to verify and I can see if it can be.
Sure.
If the margin of error is, I don't know if you've ever taken statistics, but basically, so you've taken statistics. You would know that so if the upper confidence limit, the lower confidence limit, if 0 is within the confidence interval.
Okay, that aside, if I can interject, if you can actually hear me.
Kind of.
Yeah, the thing with Spain is, Spain was one of the richest empires of the 16th century, and second of all, the reason why we're in terms of production was very simple because these Spain, France, these were internal picking till. they were still like feudal countries, while the Netherlands, Britain, they developed healthy middle class process.
The question is, why did England? What's special about England and the Netherlands that they developed this economic growth? They developed these capitalist economies. They moved out of feudalism. The answer,
because they had more urban centers,
is movement to democracy.
No, they had more urban centers with bigger class of like urban producers. Countries like Spain, France had bigger, vast aristocratic land, which kind of stalled the progress of bourgeoisie. But it doesn't matter. It's democratic. Like you can still have you can still have like autocratic government and still utilize modern production today. I think the Chinese been pretty fun. Like they're still exploiting Africa, and they don't need some bourgeois democracy to do so.
So one of the pieces of data they point to in this study that they use as an alternate to GDP per capita, because we don't have great estimates of the economy back in like 1700, for example, is just urbanization. One of the things they find is that it's these democracies that are able to increase urbanization. Democracies not only increase like GDP faster, they increase urbanization faster. So if it's true that France had less urbanization, it's also true that France grew less urbanization because it was less democratic. That's the basic problem.
No, the democracy arrived from already established urban centers. And the reason why there were urban centers more in the Northern Europe is because there was decrease of the trade in the Mediterranean area once the Ottomans arrived. This is not political. This is all economical growth.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Can you hear me now?
Mostly.
Yeah, I was saying like that's all economical growth, which was caused by already established factors. For example, Ottoman conquest of the Eastern Roman Empire caused shift from trade from south to north, because the trade started with south now that Muslims control North Africa and in the Eastern Europe was no longer profitable. That's why trade shifted from South Europe to the North Europe, and that's why the more urban centers developed in areas were less affected by war, like Netherlands, Britain, and even like Germany, for example, which was very conservative, autocratic government, had more industrial output than Britain in 20th century.
No, Germany was like 3 to 4 times poorer than England was.
German Empire?
Yeah.
No,
like, even at World War I, Germany was like half as rich per person as England.
Not rich, but in industrial production.
I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of value added back in these days was industrial production. So yeah.
Also,
I would just say like industrial production is a little bit of an odd thing to point to, because like that's also highly like location specific. There's the industry is in
like,
areas.
I think I mean like the development of like, the bourgeois class in like northern Europe was more of historical circumstances lying up than like some democratic proceeding. The reason why it happened was because the trade in Southern Europe was increased. No areas were more peaceful. It allowed for better urbanization. There you get these urban class that could adapt better to new industrial methods of production than agrarian started countries of Europe.
So I think it's possible. You can always try and find an alternate explanation for why it is that democracy correlates with growth, right? But the fact is that virtually every study, it's like 90% of studies that have been produced about this, find that for virtually any time period we look at, from 1300 to today, democracy correlates with growth.
Okay, I'm going to actually interject here, because do you think that like maybe when we say democratization, what we really mean is obviously we all know correlation doesn't equal causation. So
yep.
What I would argue, kind of playing devil's, I don't really, in this particular debate, I mean, my position on democracy is that within capitalism is that it really can only be the sort of despotism of certain parts of the ruling class trying to buy out votes, usually. So, obviously centered around parties, you have these represents the standard Marxist understanding of the state, whether it's democratic or not, is that it does it's essentially the executive of the state is the committee for managing the affairs of the bourgeoisie. That's somewhat of a simplification, but primarily what I would say is that democracy within capitalism essentially means basically, segments of the ruling class buying out votes to. Anyways,
Also,
I
something doesn't add up.
I probably should have. I probably should have thought out my explanation more. What I'm trying to say is that the study that you showed, when it says like before and after democratization, that could actually be the factor that could mean like that could explain the GDP growth. It could be the just the introduction of capitalism. So it basically is going from maybe a semi-feudal economy to a capitalist economy, right? That's something that has to be taken.
It very much could be. I guess it's part of this is like they're
Also,
even
like
looking at
these
countries
countries
that
were
they're
not-
even
I
looking
have
at
to- I
countries
have to
like
point
Chile
out-
under Pinochet or like Brazil, right? They're
have
looking
to
at
point
these
out,
modern non-feudal countries.
I can point out these countries were not democracies. Like Netherlands, British countries were bourgeois autocracy. Like they became democratic very recently. In times like industrial revolution, they were bourgeois autocracies.
So-
Plus, if you look at the industrial growth in the beginning of the 20th century, the country leading in industrial output and industrial growth was actually Russian Empire, which was autocracy, the zenith autocracy in Europe. And in 1913, the industrial output was equal to a bourgeois plutocracy of France, which does not correlate to like democratic institutions. It correlates that if you have more resources to make it profitable to expand on like industrial level.
Democracy is a gradient. The general idea is that when we're talking about quote unquote democracy in like the 1300s to 1700s, we're mostly talking about a shift from like feudal power to increasingly like urban, as you call it, bourgeois democracy. What
But
we
it's
saw
not
in the United
democracy,
States, for
it's
example, what we
essentially
saw in England, for
replacing-
example.
It's essentially replacing feudal lords with new urban capitalists. It's a plutocracy. Like,
So
there
that's
wasn't,
what
like,
happened
democratic-
initially, but in virtually every democracy, franchise was expanded again and again and again and
But
again.
not because
to
of-
extend
but not
to
because-
less and less wealthy people.
because obviously the early stages of industrial production were so exploitative that there was emergence of proletarian identity which engaged in class violence. So to stabilize the state, the bourgeois engaged in social reforming. That's why they did this, to maintain their power, because if they kept doing what they did, it would end in revolution. In Russia is a great example, where there were a relatively young industrial nation. It was heavily being very industrialized. It could not at the moment engage in such reforms because we had aristocratic structure, we had emerging bourgeoisie. Such conflict caused state collapse. But in countries such as France or Britain, which had history of labor movement, the bourgeoisie could engage in social reformism to prevent violence happening and the rule engage. What they did is not some humanitarian act. They didn't do this because they loved the people. They understood that if they don't engage in populism, the proletarian class will be alienated enough to engage in violence and to destroy the state.
So I don't disagree. That's in fact precisely my argument. It's that as the working class has wrested more and more democratic power from the initial seeds of democracy that were bourgeois dominated, we have also seen an enormous expansion of the variety of policies that leftists would like to see. There's an enormous correlation between the enormous expanse of democracy over time, the enormous extension of like workers' rights, the enormous extension of like the welfare state, enormous like essentially shift leftward. So not only did the bourgeois give us political power, they gave us enormous proportions of their profit, right?
They didn't give you political power.
In 1900, right? In 1900, the average government spent 1% of GDP in social welfare. Today, the figure in the rich countries is on average 30%. They've given up a third, or more or less, of their profits.
No, that's not giving you political power. That's essentially just buying you out. That them giving immense wealth for proletarian to prevent creation of proletarian
The problem with this theory is that even the least giving states, right, even like the United States, even Japan, even South Korea, they are under no threat of a revolution. There has not been
because
one
they still
successful
engage
revolution in a liberal democratic state. Not one.
Yeah, because they still engage in social reform, like the government.
And this argument is
Japan.
basically unprovable, right? If all you need to do is engage in any amount of giving to the poor to make them stop doing a revolution, why didn't they stop at 5% of GDP? Why didn't they stop at 10? Why didn't they stop at 15? Why are we up to 30?
Because
Why
society
did they keep
develops, like
going?
the industrial grow and need or expand. So long the material needs were satisfied, the people, like, that's the thing.
But our material needs were satisfied when they gave us like just a little bit of welfare. They're giving us enormously more welfare. This theory can't account for the fact that we've seen expansion of the welfare state far beyond the needs necessary to keep the proles from engaging in revolution.
Again, like, no, as the industrial society expands, so does the need for labor or in that society. That's why the sector society expand, and that's why reformism expand, because you cannot have a sector society which are not pacified by this social reformism, and
Why would increasing the need for labor make it them need to give us more, right? Like I think you could maybe make an argument that, hey, they need to give us education so we can be educated workers, maybe. But
No,
they've done far more than that. Like, an enormous portion of what they give people is like old age benefits. This does not seem very amenable to stopping the revolution. What 60-year-old is going to rise up against the state and build a proletarian revolution? Like,
no, he's always going to within the politics. He's going to engage within political system established by the bourgeoisie. Once they open this system to like political parties and engage in democracy, obviously to engage in politics, you need popular support. That's why you have political parties which on these social issues. None of these social issues, as you said, were enough to like cause serious social violence. The fundamental problem, the fundamental thing that I'm talking about is that people, the average person, does not care about the ideological concepts of communism and fascism. They care about being materially satisfied by the state enough to have comfortable life and to participate within their daily activities. The ideas of democracy, liberties, individual rights, communism, fascism, they don't come from the masses. They come from the political group of political actors who then use the conditions of the state build up. Like the fascism would come if there was not already conditions for such movement to rise. Same for Russia, same for Nazi Germany. Like this didn't come to the mass and preach this specific idea. There was incentive to this movement.
Like if we've shifted from talking about like the bourgeois paying off the workers and we're just talking about like how ideologies function, sure, we can talk about that. But specifically on like the bourgeois just paying off people, I think that it's hard to say that they need to be paying off people as much as they are currently doing to avoid revolution. If revolution is the only threat
that's
that we care about,
democratic system. That's what I elaborate. Like once in the democratic system, the political actors who want to participate in the system to get power need some popular support. That's why they'll find some issues like people not getting enough paid once they have pensions. That's why they're going to run on these issues. They will not engage in formulating some political directive which will destroy the state. They simply use the mild problems of average person to formulate a movement which can get political power. But
that's like democracy function. What you described there isn't the bourgeois buying off the workers. It's like center-left parties buying stuff for people that the people desire. Like.
No, I clearly the beginnings were obviously the need to stabilize the state and to need to prevent class violence. But as we established those institutions, the way to get into power were by democratic institutions. And as the democratic process continued, expanded on these ideas of feminism, elderly rights, racial rights, these things expanded as the bourgeois were forced to initially democratize for the sake of the state.
Okay, I have a better... Yeah, I was sorry to interject. I will let Skeletor finish talking, but I think I have...
I'm finished.
You're finished talking. Okay, I have a better case to make against the sort of the democracy argument.
Sure.
It's kind of what I was trying to say before, but the problem why I was fucking stuttering and shit was because I was trying to make 2 points at once. Basically, I'm going to give like the Sorelian view of this, which is that. So as I was saying, democracy is essentially under capitalism is essentially segments of the ruling class trying to buy out the largest and the most ignorant slice of the population. And if we look at, and this is something Sorel, when he was in Reflections of Violence, when he was criticizing the Huars and the parliamentary socialists, was that these reformist socialists, today we just maybe call them social democrats, social reformers, their policies, which are designed to protect the working class, which include things like high tariffs, price controls, wage controls. You see a similarity with these sort of social democratic policies and those of kind of the arch conservative, the sort of old Tory policies of protectionism and high taxes, high tariffs, and so. Basically, the argument is that what he saw was that these parliamentary socialists were naturally tending to kind of, in some way, consolidate with these arch conservative types. And actually, if you look at the Fabians in the United Kingdom, quite a good amount of them had aristocratic backgrounds. And if we look today if we look at, and I'm not talking about in general, I'm not talking about socialism. I'm just saying that democracy and capitalism. If we look at post-Keynesian, sorry, not post-Keynesian. That's what I meant to say. Western countries after the Keynesian reforms in the mid 20th century, they. Economic growth did accelerate for quite a bit, simply because they were stimulating manufacturing industries, and a lot of that industry was actually developed through the hand of the state and state-directed investment. But if we look today, GDP growth for these Western countries who have undergone significant Keynesian reforms is like maybe 2-3%, whereas if you look at China, which sort of has this.
You can't compare those.
Why?
Because we know that GDP growth tends to slow as countries grow. Like if you look at the United States, 1850 growing at 10% per year. China growing 10% per year. The GDP per capita of both countries wasn't too different. Nowadays, the United States has $50,000 per person. China has 10. Of course, it's going to grow faster.
That is actually fair.
You can compare them, but you just can't compare them one to one.
Yeah, because that is fair, because that's just the law of diminishing returns. So, but yes. What I was trying to say is that because in capitalism, any social reform kind of has this tendency to consolidate with the arch conservatives, and you see this now. I mean, you have a lot of Bernie supporters that switch to Trump because a lot of the rhetoric is kind of the same. It's
not
basically
really. The stat there is like 5%. It's like 1 in 20.
What do you mean?
It's like 1 in 20 people who voted for Bernie in the primary voted for Trump in the generals. That's the stat.
Oh yeah, shit.
So some did, but I'm just saying it's like.
Yeah. Okay, I'm talking. Yeah, I'm not saying it's a huge statistical significant amount of people. I'm just saying I'm explaining why that kind of makes sense, and it's not completely out of the blue. This is actually mostly people on the internet, but a lot of and also Bernie Sanders, somewhat like he. Beginning in 2016, his protectionism was quite similar to that of Donald Trump's, and so not a statistically a significant amount of people went to go vote for Trump. Statistically significant amount of Bernie supporters went to go vote for Trump. It makes sense that there would be a pipeline there because, again, the sort of this arch-conservative, paleo-conservative worldview that wants to. They basically both want to restrain capitalism for greater stability. The social reformers do it for the working class. The arch conservatives do it for more me sort of, I guess, like for the petty bourgeois. But ultimately, that's the tendency. So, what I'm saying is that, well, democracy if we look at countries that transition from before democratization and after democratization, a lot of it can be explained by just simply going from a semi-feudal economy to a capitalist economy. You also have the fact that a lot of democracies sort of tend to start out as sort of this more of a liberal elitism. And I think that, the Marxist economics agrees with this as well. Not only, well, Marx basically, if you took Marxist economics to its logical conclusion, liberal elites tend to be the most efficient managers of capitalism, whereas the sort of arch conservative types and the social reformers, they tend to want to restrain capitalism. So basically, what I'm saying is that what really might be meant, like what factors that could be what is just lumped in as democratization could just mean the transition from a semi-feudal economy to a capitalist economy, and the ascendancy of sort of a liberal managerial elite within the republic.
I think Pierre can agree with my point that the reason why democracy expanded on these social issues because it's the only way for anybody to participate in bourgeois liberalism, to find a specific goal to really the popular support for, like, obviously, well, how will you get elected if you don't engage in this sort of like populism, or I will grant these social issues and solve them or something like that. That's the reason why these issues have been expanded from the original attempts that the early bourgeois to pacify the class conflict by a certain level of reformism.
Could you repeat that? You kind of broke up there.
I was just saying the reason why we expanded on these social issues within the democracies, it's the only way to actually get the popular support to participate in democratic electoralism. That's the reason why these things have expanded on, like why from just giving people to vote, rights to people to vote, to feminist issues, is because to participate in bourgeois politics, you find social issues you can exploit to create a movement which will launch you into political actors.
So I guess to stay on Pierre's point first, I do agree that it's possible that some of the growth that we're seeing is not just due to democracy, it's due to correlates of democracy. I will say that the old critique of like correlation is not causation doesn't quite apply here, because in this case they literally are looking at causal effects. They're literally looking at like before actor sort of stuff. You can say that the shift to democracy was also causally correlated with other stuff you're talking about, like a shift to capitalism in the study about the earlier time periods, and a shift to, like, say, accepting neoliberal markets, to accepting like foreign investment in modern times. But I don't think that it can explain all of this growth. Like, one of the points of the study in the old periods is to suggest that only in democracy can capitalism function well, which maybe leads into your argument about liberal managers being better managers of capitalism. And I take a little bit of problem with that, because to me this seems to suggest that like leftist economics would tend to grow more slowly than would like liberal managers of capitalism, which this seems to imply that like were we to move to a socialist system where we didn't have liberal capitalism, then we would actually be growing more slowly, which seems
that's not like, it depends what you mean by socialism. What I mean by socialism is production for use, whereas, I mean, basically what I'm saying is that when you have in an economy premised on production for exchange, liberal managerial elites will be more efficient managers of capitalism. They'll produce greater economic growth, whereas these sort of more the social reformers would tend to contract it in some way. That's my argument.
And I guess I'm just not so sure about this. Like, there are lots of studies that people can point you to, like higher inequality correlates with lower growth, for example, which would seem to be something that liberal managers aren't going to care about, right? Neoliberals have presided over an increase in inequality, not a decrease. There's lots of evidence that you invest in startups, you invest in basic research, you invest in active labor market policies, all these sort of things. They tend to spur growth because they spur innovation, which is the biggest determinant of economic growth. And all these things, again, aren't things that the liberal managers, the neoliberal managers are big on. They've been stripping away those things.
Yeah,
so I guess
here's the thing. When you say that inequality contracts economic growth, that is likely true, but in the case where like those at the top, the amount of like money that they're collecting, the amount of assets that they have, they're not investing it, right? It's not. They're sort of more like aristocrats, whereas like more of a bourgeois, a capitalist elite, they would be investing more of that, more of their money into more capital and capital expansion and such. Whereas, so it really kind of depends on the character of the inequality, right? So because not,
I guess
yeah.
All right.
Sorry, continue.
I was going to mention if you want a book to read out of this. So I think I sent Pierre a DM that I probably would like to close off maybe in 10, 15 minutes or so. Wanted to play with my sister and eat dinner. No
worries. We can wrap this up. We can probably do a stream, like another stream, some other time.
Sure.
That's not maybe without Skeletor, and it'll be more structured.
It's clearly working out.
It might be nice to have a more structured one-on-one sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that would be a lot better, actually.
Democracy is something that's a little bit hard to discuss because it's like vague and large. It could be good to focus in on something like, I don't know, identity politics or like Sorelianism or something more specific.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to talk about identity politics at least a little
honestly,
bit during this
Peter, and I think that, like,
okay, fucking robot guy. Listen, Robo-Serb, repeat yourself, please.
I'm just saying the reason why point is...
Okay, maybe, listen, yeah, no, this is not working, buddy. Try again.
I'm saying that the reason why isn't giving me this...
Maybe just type it out.
No,
type it out and we'll close it off, and we'll try this another time.
Sure. I guess the one thing I wanted to mention as like a closing sort of thing relating to like capital management and what basically this is more to me about like what effective economic policy is like Mariana Mazzucato's book, which libertarians love to hate, is called The Entrepreneurial State. It's about like the enormous role of the state in spurring innovation, spurring economic growth in particularly the examples they point to are South Korea and China, which both famously had 5-year plans, with both did an enormous amount of state investment, basic research. They forced companies to share research, share technicians, share innovations, which all kind of relates to like building a society in which like people work together less for profit and more for use. I think that's like it's not a socialist book, but it's a good book from like a left perspective on how the state can be effective in increasing economic growth. I guess I would basically contest the idea that liberal leaders are the most effective at running an economy. That's the thing I would close on.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, actually, I'll just say that like I'm not saying that the state isn't integral in the development of capitalism. That would be silly. I think capitalism has a dual-sided nature. On one hand, central administration, and on the other, the free market. So, it's just what I'm saying is like the social reformers, they'll use the state apparatus for these moralistic ends to generate equality, and this will kind of just restrain capitalism. And like the Keynesian policies in the middle of the 19th century were very effective because they were stimulating production to a great degree. And whereas before, I mean, especially in the United States, the sort of usurious and commercial aspects of capitalism were more dominant, which led to obviously the market crash in 1929. Most things were bought on credit. There was a huge bubble in the automobile industry, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why like Keynesian reforms were so integral in actually rebuilding that economy, because it was stimulating more production. However, that besides from just diminishing returns, I would say that economic growth contracted as well, just because of, again, you had more so it changed from state directed investment in industry and production, and more so state investment in social peace. And that's another reason for the contraction in economic growth. If we just look at the first world, production isn't being as stimulated. I mean, it's pretty much state policy more than anything, I think, is actually bankrupting production. And I'll leave it there. We can probably come back to this the next stream.
Sorry.
Can you hear me? Or?
Can I? Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, these are
nope. You're still sorry. You're breaking up again.
I'm saying these things are irrelevant because ideas like they're irrelevant. Like I'm perfectly fine in like America being a democratic state. And for Russia, these countries don't need some ideas like the democracy. Like democracy is enlightenment ideas.
Big guy, yeah. It's sorry. Like you're not coming across anymore. It's just not working. You should just type it out, and I'll read it for you. Or just say you're racist. It's also a good idea. Hobie Glass suggested that. It sounded like he just dropped his mic.
No, I connected again. Is it any better?
Yeah. Now I can actually hear you.
I'm just saying these things are secondary because in geopolitical expansion, China is doing fine, Russia is doing fine, and your historical examples that you provided, as I said, can be easily countered and explained in a better way. For example, the development of urban settlements in Northern Europe because of the lack of trade in Southern Europe because of the Ottoman conquest of the Eastern Roman Empire. It can be far more explainable than a democracy somehow bringing people together to join cities.
Okay, is that your final statement?
I mean, why do we need final statement? Yeah, sure. Now the internet is doing fine.
I wouldn't say Russia's doing fine. Russia, like especially with COVID, Russia seems to be, especially since like
Russia on long term, Russia long term is doing fine. They annexed Crimea. They.
Okay, economically, I mean their economic foresight's not how much cool things they've what they've conquered. And you started breaking up again.
Okay, what about now?
Now I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm saying that their geopolitical expansion is way beyond their economic output, which makes them even more impressive.
Sorry, you said their economic expansion is way beyond their...
No, their economic output.
Okay, their economic output is way beyond their...
Like, it's way lower than the expansion. Like they are expanding despite the fact that the economy is way smaller than other great powers.
Okay. So they're
So
expanding more than they're producing, is what you're saying, and that's a good thing.
no, their economy is obviously on the global level. On global level, obviously, Russian economy is weaker because they like the output they make is like natural resources. But in terms of like geopolitics, the influence they have is bigger than what economy they have. Like their influence in Syria, their influence in Central Asia, their influence in Central in Caucasus, their influence in Africa. Like all these things, all these accomplishments are done despite the fact that the economy is very smaller.
Oh, okay. So they're doing fine because of that. All right. I mean, that's
Yeah.
fair. That's a good, decent geopolitical.
That's my point. Like these ideas of democracy, they're totally nonsensical. Like not some.
Pierre, I need the Leonist critique on the shortcomings of the CNTFAI. Actually, that would be an interesting idea for a video. I might do that, but I would need to actually look more at the structure. And
Is De Leon like a council communist guy?
Sort of. Yeah, he was. I mean, close. He was more.
Yeah, I was saying.
So,
I
people
can you
usually.
now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry.
Yeah, I was thinking these things developed because of the material conditions being more favorable towards these countries, and the idea of democracy only aroused out of like philosophical enlightenment of this bourgeois class that already existed because of the conditions that I described before.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, that's my criticism of like so like. Uh,
Well, I would be happy to discuss Sorel, identity politics, and
Yeah,
whatever
I think we'll end it here. I'm fucking my patience for RoboServe has kind of run out. So next stream we can talk identity politics, George Sorel, and maybe some other things. And we can go back to the democracy and economics argument, and it'll be more structured and fleshed out. Yeah, that sounds good. It was really good talking to you. You, of all of BreadTube, you seem like a very decent, well-spoken individual, a nice, decent guy. So, yeah.
Yeah, stroke my ego. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you defeated the Serb. Pretty much. I mean, he had an unfair advantage.
Well, that's a low bar. Even NATO could do that. All I would just say is thanks again for having me on, and I hope both of you have a lovely evening.
As you as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Can you join the voice call in Power Politics?
Voice call? Why?
Yeah, because I want to talk like first of all, I mentioned unpreparedness. I told you like hour before. Let's first join and let's talk about what we're going to discuss.
Okay.
Why you raise this guy? This guy's total moron. Like imagine like saying, well, no, the idea of democracy.
Man, it was your idea to have him on. Okay, like.
Yeah, but I told you an hour before the debate. Let's first join and see what we can discuss.
Okay. And people in the chat are saying, "Yeah, Serb is mad. This is what Serbians sound."
Yeah, I'm mad because you allowed this strong to speak this total nonsense bullshit. Like, oh, the idea of democracy somehow developed out of
What do you mean? What do you mean? I interjected and gave the Sorelli, and then he.
And you went on totally. Listen, you're only YouTuber whose own fans don't like you. Nobody's voice that. Nobody that chat likes you. Like everybody thinks that you're a crazy, insane trolling guy. Like everybody thinks you're dumb.
Oh well, that's do they? Let me ask the chat. Do you guys think I'm dumb?
Have you seen the view? Let's compare to Julie. Julie has way less subscribers. He has way more views than you. Look at the more recent videos.
Yeah, no, he's actually. Yeah, I've noticed that he's been taking in a lot more traffic.
Yeah, even your fans, like your server, look at your comment. Like these people, they don't know what you believe in, or if they do, they like openly mock you. Like instead of attacking him on the points I made, which are totally valid market points, you went to some tangent of like economics, which is totally irrelevant. when he says that the Dutch and British industry, it's not because some idea of democracy, it's because the historical conditions allowed it. But that's the problem with Pierre. You don't know history. That's your point. You only know to talk about like vague economical terms. You know about history. You know about philosophy or politics.
What do you mean? I do. I've probably touched more.
I mean, it literally provide a lot of historical examples for what we're talking about.
I mean, here's the thing. Evan Does News says he's negging you, and I tend to agree with that. I mean, I wasn't. Again, this was an off-the-cuff stream. If you really wanted me to,
I told you. I literally told you on Twitter. I told you in these several times. Let's discuss when the date. But no, you leave me on scene. And once you arrive, I told you, let's at least go hour before, see what we can discuss. But even then, you ignore. I don't know if it's like too much pot doing. Like it's too.
No, I haven't been smoking any weed at all.
You should, absolutely. It's clearly affecting your professionalism.
Really? Well,
yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, like yesterday, I just wrote pretty much 2 midterms, so I don't have all the time in the world to like prepare shit.
I literally asked for hour before the debate. You were
an hour before the debate. I was, which was what 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. I told you I was like, I was busy, and anyways.
Okay, let's forget organization. I'm just saying that your argument about him are weak because people thrive and these statistics, and then you like artistically engage with them. You shouldn't. You should just say that the worldview simply wrong. No, this does not correlate growth of some British Empire. Do you know what?
I was trying to give you an upper hand. I was trying to see if there was like maybe it could be explained with sampling error, and then you would have had them. You're like, hey, this study is bullshit. But I was like, all right.
But it doesn't matter about the study because the study is relevant.
So you just want to ignore the study and just say, hey, your worldview is wrong.
I provide a historical example of why his view is wrong. The reason why democratic institutions showed in Britain, in Netherlands, is because there was always a bourgeois class developed, and the reason why bourgeois class developed in this is because the trade was more prominent in the north than the south once the first established hegemony over the Mediterranean region, making it unprofitable for the merchant to engage in certain trade anymore. And what made the British Empire so rich and prosperous was not some social populism. It was literally British people going to Africa and taking their resources and doing that in populism. These are all historical examples you could say, but you don't. You engage in some abstractions totally meaningless. You have been saying that, and I don't know what you said. I don't think it's possible to hear somebody talking for an hour and you not saying anything.
So you wanted me to like, defend your entire point. I mean, like, listen, if this was more structured, well, I probably would have gotten in more. But again, obviously this wasn't planned out well.
My point is correct, isn't it?
But you say like, oh, I called you or I messaged you an hour before. I mean, literally Pierre talking to Cleverbot. Yeah, that's pretty much what this is. But listen. I like you're like putting all the blame on me. Like this was you set this up yourself. You're just mad that I left you on scene because I was fucking busy with midterms and shit. You messaged me just an hour before.
Listen. This is now kind of women's now. It's a woman who is called for being unprofessional. I'm just saying in terms of arguments.
Man, you don't even have an internet connection. You're fucking like probably perched atop a radio tower.
Even without connection, I still made better points than you.
Okay, well, you made better points than me. I mean, he seemed to think my points were a lot better than yours, and he.
Because no. Do not make he engaged in your points because my points actually. He can provide studies for that. My points are actually those show him wrong. He wants to engage with you because you fall for his dumb tricks. He wants you to, I should look at the study. No, these things are irrelevant.
Well, like, I'm sorry I looked at the fucking study for you, man. What can I say?
No, don't look at the study. Just say no. The correlation of development of democracy was some abstract idea. It was simply material conditions.
Yeah, no, and I made that point. I made that point. I made the point you were incapable of making. I made it was a very obvious point. You didn't make it. You went into this fucking geopolitics. I mean, yeah, like you have these nice historical examples and all these nice geopolitics, but I mean, you have to engage with, especially you're talking to some Keynesian, like liberal socialist type of person. You have to engage with them more than just these, like, third positionist analogies to
it's not irrelevant.
It's not gonna it's gonna win you some nice cool debates with some basic liberals, but he clearly seems educated. I mean, he's not gonna...
He clearly doesn't seem educated because his historical knowledge is simply...
Yeah, he does. I will say he buys into some like Whig history where it's just like constant.
It's dumb history. As soon as you have historical analysis, your worldview is dumb because that's not how things work.
You said that's how politics work? Is your historical analysis?
If your historical analysis is correct, if you view history in a wrong way, your worldview right now is going to be crap. Like, history is not totally alien to us. The end goal of every citizen in 200 years ago and now are the same. Like, what a Roman citizen wanted and what an average citizen today want are similar things. Methods change, I agree, but the end goal of every state is still the same. The British state, the Roman state, the Russian state, any state still wants to maintain itself, maintain its hierarchy, and expand. It's that simple. That's the end goal of every state in history.
So that's so vague. You're just saying the end goal of every state throughout history is to maintain itself and expand.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the character of that expansion?
Expansion can change.
The way the Roman Empire was expanding, it was expanding to get greater access to slaves, and as well as resources.
Because of economy. But the reason the economy developed and everything else, it's all part of the expansion and maintaining the state. Obviously, the methods change, the mode of production change.
I mean, you're saying that I'm bringing up these abstractions. These are like just expansion. That is an abstraction. The character of the expansion makes all the difference. It seriously does.
No.
If we look at imperialism today, is far different. It's basically unrecognizable from the imperialism.
What's the end goal? What's the end goal of American imperialism today, and the end goal of Roman imperialism? If not to empower Rome against other societies outside them. The reason why Rome went to Gaul and the reason why America went to Iraq are similar things, to achieve greater geopolitical relevance in their respective areas. Obviously, America will have different model of imperialism because there are different model of production. Obviously, but the end goal of these things are still to maintain itself and maintain and to pacify the conflict within the Roman society. The reason why, for example, Roman states, Roman peasantry, Roman aristocracy, those people could cohere into some sort of functioning state was because the outside forces were too alien for them and forced them to collaborate. Same thing for Americans. The alien forces, in this case would be Mexicans, blacks, force these white people to collaborate into a state. And why this, and then they do so to materially support themselves, to satisfy material needs of individual and to expand. If you don't expand, other countries will, which will endanger you long run.
Yes, if you don't expand, this again. These are geopolitical like this is just common sense, Skeletor. Seriously,
but that's the thing. These people don't have common sense. This person does not have a common sense.
No, he's using far more than common sense. He's coming at you with statistics, with data.
What statistics?
He gave you a whole study. He gave you a whole study. Man.
Yeah, I addressed the study. The reason why, for example, countries became more democratic, became more wealthier, is because countries became more democratic means they're entering American sphere of influence, which will obviously naturally include America to invest in them. And the countries leaving democratic sphere, it means the countries usually are going against America, which will cause economic war between them and America. That's so easily explainable.
So is your okay? Yeah, no, that does make sense. I mean,
That makes sense. And then he came with another study. Then came with another study which shows the development of Netherlands and then even then I addressed him the proper way that there is no correlation between some democratic ideas and development of the bourgeoisie in the Northern Europe. The Northern Europe developed, the bourgeoisie in Northern Europe developed purely because of the geopolitical position of the Southern Europe, which prevented large profitable trade, and it had to shift somewhere else, somewhere it's more safe, which means what? Northern Europe.
Like that joint. Listen, we should probably end this now because this is kind of getting boring. So here's what I was saying. Did you bring up the example of South Korea when you're making the point that? Oh, you should have came back at him and said that. So one reason why, like, if we look at 1985, from 1985, that's when South Korea's quality of life rose ahead of North Korea, and that was simply because the United States had a vested interest in seeing South Korea succeed, whereas North Korea was pretty much isolated from all of its allies. You know, that would have been a good point to make. I should have made. I could have made that point for you, but like, listen. If you want to get so mad at me, I did make the point. Basically, giving that basic Sorelian point is how, if we're just using Marxist economics, that liberal managerial elite are the most efficient managers of capitalism.
He wants to engage. He wants you to use his argument because then he can.
He wanted me to use that argument. He was hoping I was going to use that argument.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
He was hoping he would engage with somebody like you because he would also talk on his level. When he talks like somebody else, like me, who
just talks about geopolitics and expansion of
am I correct or not?
In the most abstract possible way?
No. How are geopolitics even abstract? You mean that Celt raiding Rome was abstraction? I can assure you the rape of Rome was not abstraction. The destruction of Carthage was not abstraction. The World War II uprising was not an abstraction. Do you think the war crimes that Serbs did in Bosnia are abstraction? No, but it's all are part of geopolitics. That's not abstraction. That's the foundation of any relations. The history is state under state. And state to function normally is to pacify conflict. That's why this societies are going to engage in social reform and populism. That's why working identity, the identity of a proletariat, is not going to work because you just have a state which will manage to keep people fed and manage to keep people materially satisfied. But there is no political proletarian identity. People will not engage in proletarian violence. It's simple to destroy the attempt to destroy bourgeoisie. The only case where it happened was in Russia, which was in a very specific situation, which will not happen again because the first world country is already industrialized. The only case you can make is revolutions Africa. But fuck Africa. If they dare to be socialist, America will be the first one to bomb them into submission.
Sorry, you said that. What did you say about Africa? Can you repeat that?
Africa, if somehow socialism happens in some socialist genuine revolution of workers, if it happened, America will be first one to destroy them, decimate. And that's over. If you want a revolution, socialist revolution, it has to happen in the first world, but it can't, because first world solves the class issue by social reformism.
Actually, I would say that's arguably. You're saying that if there was a revolution in Africa, that the United States would just crush it.
Crush it, yeah.
And you're talking about a continent-wide revolution.
I don't care if it happened. Never want.
I mean, there was a revolution in Cuba that succeeded. So,
yeah, the United States, it was aligned.
The United States is having. The United States is having. The United States is currently falling. I mean, it's having a really hard. Like if we just
do you want somebody to do you want to bring me somebody else in this voice call to correct how much they're not falling?
Who? Julian?
Hollow. He's pretty good. Yeah.
So Hollow Spice wants to say he wants to argue that the United States is currently not in decline.
I can ask him that America is not falling. That America is more able to stop any socialist illusion of African rebellion if you want. Since people cannot hear me.
I don't think Hollow Spice is going to make the case that first of all, no, I'm not even gonna. You fucking drag this conversation to a revolution in Africa. Because
it's the only place where
this isn't like
the only place where revolution is going to happen. Because the genuine left working proletarian entity is dead. The socialists have been destroyed in Britain, Germany, these places. That the left is losing ground because there is no longer working class which will support socialism. There is not a single relevant socialist group which actually engages in any form like political activity. Every single socialist group purely engages on like liberal humanism, not proletarian identity, but liberal humanism.
I mean, in the first world, yeah. In the third world, I wouldn't.
In the third world, it doesn't matter. Any global hegemon can crush any sort of uprising in Africa today. And the reason why it happened in Cuba was because of geopolitics, because there was USSR to back them up.
Here's the that's just historically not even. If you want to talk about geopolitics, I can give you a 1,000 examples of failed U.S. interventions. Vietnam.
Okay, give me.
It's so fucking obvious. Vietnam.
Why would it wasn't a long
or look, we don't even have to go for socialist revolutionary examples. Syria.
But it wasn't.
Syria most recently.
I have to correct you on two things. First of all, Vietnam was not a socialist revolution. It was really national revolution. Like
it was a national revolution. It was a national liberation that was needed by a communist party. I think you're just
the guy said he's purely socialist because he's nationalist. Like these liberation movements that put up in Africa and
so
did
yes,
not care.
Ho Chi Minh was primarily a nationalist. Here's the thing: he had the support. He was still leader of the Communist Party of Vietnam, and even if you want to say, okay, they were mostly driven by nationalism, and I would agree with you. They were backed by the Soviet Union, and even Mao, even the PRC for a while until obviously the Soviet split.
It was in the interest. Yeah, imagine my shock. It was in the interest of the Soviet Union for America to lose somewhere. But it's not going to like none of these shitty liberation movements engaged in some idea of like global revolution. They only engage liberate themselves.
Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they were fighting for, what their ideas were. It just what matters is the actual intervention itself. But listen, we've went way off track. I think we should just end the stream and we'll end this conversation, and then maybe I can have you on the next stream or something.
Maybe. But I set this up. Listen, you can end the stream, but you're going to join the power play politics, and we will discuss this in the voice call, because this is the debate where Jolie is allowed to get away. You know, it is like almost long as endgame. They allow you to like in these dumb ideas, but when we talk about great stuff, you just collapse.
About what? Sorry. Here, I want to end the stream and then I'll